What's up, guys? Garrett here from Beast Coast Performance to talk to you a bit more about training and calculating maximal aerobic speed. We talked about this recently on Patreon in a public post, and I want to go a bit more in depth into how to calculate it to make that easier for you guys. We're going to start with the 1600 meter run test. Now, to perform this test, you're going to need a 400 meter track or 50 meter length of flat ground, or a relatively flat 1 mile run course. We want it to be flat just to kind of keep things consistent, but in these times you can work with whatever you've got. So you need a known mile, give or take, and you're going to run it. You're going to run it to the point where you should be exhausted when you finish the mile. Then we're going to do a few things with that. If you ran this as a 1600, we're going to use the calculations I have here. If you ran this as a mile, instead of using 1600 anywhere in here, you're going to use 1609. Not that big of a difference, but you know, just in case. So what you're going to do first is you're going to take the number of minutes in your time, multiply that by 60, and then you're going to add the number of seconds in your time. So that looks like if I ran a 1600 in 6:30, that becomes a 1600 in 390 seconds. And then we divide that distance over time to get meters per second, 4.1 meters per second. Right here, distance over time, speed, maximal aerobic speed, right? What we do with that number is a big deal because most of our programming for aerobic power, at least what I like to do, is usually 110 to 120% of MAS for set intervals. And we're going to keep rolling with the example we used in the first video for MAS, a 1600 meter time trial run in 6 minutes 30 seconds. So that individual had an MAS of 4.1 meters per second. Now, I normally do aerobic power between 110% and 120% of MAS. So those two numbers here are 4.51 and 4.92 meters per second. Here's how we're going to program our times or distances for our MAS intervals. We want a work to rest ratio of 1 to 1. We want to be doing 15 to 30 seconds of work at that 120%. So in that case, if we're going to do 15 seconds of work, we're going to need 73.8 meters of space, because the objective here is we're going to run at a pace where on a timer we run 15 seconds, and at the 15-second mark we cross the finish line 73.8 meters away. If you don't have anything to measure out distance like that, that's okay. I mean, a tape measure, whatever, particularly a track length tape measure, can be a bit hard to come by. So if we have a known distance, say the flat 100 meter ground that we ran our time trial on, or a flat 50 meter stretch that we ran our time trial on, we can divide the distance by our MAS, and that'll give us the amount of time we need to run on the timer to cover that distance. So we start at the end of our field, finish at the opposite end of the field, and we should finish at that time. This isn't perfect. So, you know, I say 20.3 seconds. You're not going to be staring at your watch to finish in 20.3 seconds. If you finish in 20, okay. If you finish in 21, okay, we're probably close enough. So if you've got a 100 meter stretch, we're going to need 20.3 seconds. And if we have a 50 meter stretch, we're going to need 10.1 seconds. And the idea here is we want to accumulate more and more reps running at this speed. So as an example, our first session, maybe 4 to 6 repetitions, 1 to 1 work to rest. So let's say we've got the 100 meter stretch. We're going to run 100 meters in 20 seconds. Every time we should be hitting the finish line at the 20-second mark, or if we're deciding we want to run it in 21, we need to hit it at 21 every time. Can't drop off here, have to maintain that pace. Every repetition, as soon as we hit that line, we start another clock, 20 seconds, and we just stand there and rest, catch our breaths. Pace around if you need to, but then when we hit the 20-second mark again, standing on that line, it's time to run back. So get up and go. You're going to stand at the other end and rest. And then you're going to run back. You're going to stand at that end and rest. And then you're going to run back one more time. That's your 4th rep. Stand there, cool down. That's 4 reps. In this case, 80 seconds or so, running at 128% MAS. That'd be a good session to go first off and get an idea for your pacing, because then you can use that to trial other distances. A lot about running on MAS is getting your pacing right. So don't feel like everything's got to be perfect the first time you go out there. Get out and run, get a feel for how things are going to work, because sometimes you're not used to pacing yourself for this. Same deal on the 50-second mark. If you're going to do that, you're going to run it in 10 seconds. Half field, back, half field, back, half field, back. 5 meters per second, not the hardest thing in the book. This isn't a sprint. Definitely not a sprint. This is slower than your max velocity by a mile. So keep that in mind. Run the distance. 4 to 6 repetitions your first time out, and then expand from there. The more volume we can get at MAS, the more it should increase over time. And so I'll have a guide up on how to expand upon that and increase week to week your volume for aerobic power intervals. But I wanted to give you an idea of how to calculate it and how to do it. Normally this would be the part where I ask you to donate and subscribe, sign up for Patreon. Shit's real hard right now. We're all out of work. We're working out at home because our gyms are closed. We're, making it do on the unemployment check. I don't want your money. I cannot bring myself to ask you in this situation to give money. I want you, if this information is helpful, to share it with your friends. Share it with your friends that have no idea what to do for exercise at home, or that need that little extra push and a little extra help doing the math. We're all in this. We've got mortgages to pay, rent to pay, bills, food. You got to eat, you got to sleep. Training's extra. This is extra. Be well, be safe. Tell your friends. That's all I can ask. Much love.